There are days when you sit in silence, looking back at everything you've been through, and quietly ask yourself, why do I still feel so tired even though I tried to be strong like they told me to? You didn't fall apart. You didn't give up. You kept showing up. You smiled. You worked. You acted like everything was fine. But something inside stopped feeling. You're not joyful anymore, but not hurting either. You're just numb. And then you remember the quote everyone seems to love. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It sounds right. It sounds bold. But deep down, something about it feels off. Because not everything that doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Some things simply leave you emotionally shut down, or walking around in a shell of someone who used to feel. So why do we keep holding on to this quote? Let's take a deeper look at what Nietzsche might have meant, and what we've turned this sentence into today. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's one of the most quoted lines in modern history. It shows up on coffee mugs, gym walls, Instagram bios, and motivational posters. It's been sung by pop stars and cited by presidents. It feels like a universal truth, the kind of phrase that makes you want to square your shoulders and walk through fire without flinching. The original quote comes from German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, written in 1888 in his book Twilight of the Idols. But, like many things pulled from philosophy into popular culture, the context often gets stripped away. Nietzsche was not writing this as a pep talk. He was confronting pain, chaos, and the inner battle of becoming. At its core, the quote points to a deep existential idea that suffering, if survived, can become the forge in which strength is made. That adversity doesn't only challenge, use it, can shape us into something more resilient, more aware, more real. Nietzsche wasn't preaching toxic positivity. He was speaking about transformation, the kind that comes only after deep confrontation with what breaks us. And that's part of why this quote resonated so strongly with older generations. Many of our parents and grandparents grew up in eras where life was a series of survival moments. Wars, poverty, political oppression, unstable economies. They didn't have the luxury to process pain or seek therapy. Strength wasn't optional, it was a requirement. They saw suffering not as a glitch in the system, but as the system itself. For them, the quote affirmed their lives. I went through hell, and I didn't die, so I must be stronger now. That belief helped them keep going. It gave dignity to struggle, especially when rewards were delayed or non-existent. In cultures where emotional vulnerability was frowned upon, strength was synonymous with silence, endurance, and stoicism. And in many ways, this mindset did serve a purpose. It created people who could push through unthinkable hardship, who could rebuild families, escape danger, immigrate to foreign lands, and provide stability for the next generation. But what happens when we take this quote, which was rooted in the crucible of intense, visible suffering, and apply it to a very different kind of pain? Today, most people don't face war or famine, but they face emotional fragmentation, burnout, disconnection, anxiety, depression, social comparison, internalized shame, loneliness in crowded cities, grief that isn't about death, but about identity loss. These forms of pain are quieter, but not less real. And still, we're told to be strong. We're told to toughen up, to get over it, to keep working, smiling, pushing through. We're told that if it didn't kill us, it must be making us better. But is that really true for everyone? Because if we're honest, some of the strongest looking people are also the most broken inside. They've survived so much. Yes, but at what cost? This is where the cracks begin to show in the quote. Not because it's wrong in every context, but because it's incomplete. It assumes a linear progression: hardship, survival, strength. It doesn't ask how we survived or what part of us had to shut down in order to keep going. Pain can strengthen you, but pain can also freeze you. And sometimes what doesn't kill you doesn't make you stronger. It just leaves you limping quietly through life, pretending you're okay. So, why do we keep repeating this phrase? Because it's neat, it's clean, it gives a sense of control. And in a world that often feels chaotic, believing that pain will automatically produce growth is comforting. It makes us feel like there's a reward for suffering, as if survival itself is proof of evolution. But here's the truth: most people don't say out loud, you can survive something and still be worse off. Not everything survived is a victory. Not every scar is a symbol of triumph. And sometimes, insisting that pain made us stronger prevents us from admitting that we're still hurting. That's not strength, that's suppression. So where do we go from here? Do we discard the quote entirely? Not necessarily. But maybe it's time we stop chanting it like a universal mantra and start asking deeper questions, like, what does stronger really mean? Stronger for what? And do I even want to be stronger in this way? Maybe instead of glorifying survival, we can start honoring healing. Because real strength isn't just about not breaking. Sometimes it's about letting yourself break and choosing to rebuild differently. Let's explore that more in the next part by looking at what happens when we treat this quote as a rule, not a reflection. What hidden damage do we carry when we believe we must be strong no matter what? Let's talk about the scar beneath the armor. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It sounds clean, powerful, empowering. But real life isn't always that tidy. You can survive a breakup, a layoff, a betrayal, a trauma, and sometimes, yes, you walk away stronger. Other times, you walk away quieter, heavier, a little more closed off than before. You might still smile, you might still function, but you start to notice something. You flinch at kindness. You brace yourself when things feel too calm. You stop dreaming as big. And you tell yourself, at least it didn't break me. But what if the damage wasn't in breaking? What if it was in hardening? Because sometimes, pain doesn't crack you wide open. It just makes you colder, numb, less trusting. You didn't collapse, but you stopped expanding. And nobody sees that kind of wound. That's what makes this quote tricky. It assumes that survival equals strength. But survival has many forms, and not all of them are healthy. There's a name for this: toxic resilience. It happens when we keep enduring without processing, when we wear our pain like a badge, but never clean the wound underneath it. You start to measure your worth by how much you can tolerate. You stop asking for help because strong people don't need support, right? You downplay your needs. You praise yourself for not crying. And every time something hurts, you tell yourself, I'll just push through. Eventually, you forget there's another way to live. We see this all around us. People who keep showing up to work while silently burning out. Friends who make everyone laugh but go home feeling invisible. Leaders who succeed publicly but spiral privately. They survived, but they're not stronger. They're just more exhausted. That's the hidden wound. And the most dangerous part is, it looks like strength. That's why this quote can be misleading. Not because it's wrong in itself, but because we've turned it into a one-size-fits-all truth. As if pain is always productive, as if healing is automatic, as if every scar means wisdom. But not all pain teaches you something. Some pain just needs to be felt, held, understood. You don't become stronger by ignoring it. You become stronger when you let it change you, not harden you. And that's the difference. Real strength isn't gritting your teeth through everything. Sometimes, real strength is pausing, feeling, falling apart for a moment, letting someone see your tears, and choosing consciously to rebuild not in the same shape as before, but in a way that makes room for softness too. Because strength without softness becomes defense, and defense, over time, becomes distance. So maybe the better question isn't, did this make me stronger? Maybe it's, what did I have to lose in order to survive it? And if the answer is, your ability to feel, to trust, to rest, then maybe survival alone isn't enough. But if strength isn't about pushing through everything, then what is it really about? Let's go back to the source. Let's look again not at the pop version of Nietzsche's quote, but the truth inside it. Because what he meant might be deeper, more uncomfortable, and far more human. So, if survival doesn't always equal strength, what does? It's a question worth asking, especially when the world keeps handing us the same answer. Just keep going. But not all going is growing, and not all pain turns into power, unless something else happens first. Let's return for a moment to where this quote comes from. Not the gym walls or pop songs, but Friedrich Nietzsche, the 19th century German philosopher who wrote, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger." Twilight of the Idols, 1888. Nietzsche wasn't handing out self-help slogans. He was speaking from within suffering itself. He knew madness, illness, exile, and isolation. He wasn't romanticizing pain, he was wrestling with it. To him, pain was not something to escape. It was something to be transformed. But here's the catch. Transformation isn't guaranteed. It's a choice and a process. Not everyone who suffers becomes stronger. Some people become scared, bitter, detached. Some become aggressive. Others collapse inward. So what did Nietzsche actually mean? He believed that pain, real, deep, destabilizing pain, could be a tool, a mirror, a breaking open of the ego that forces you to face who you are and who you're not. And from that clarity comes strength. But only if you do the work. If you reflect. If you confront the parts of you that cracked. If you don't just survive but integrate what you learned. Pain, in Nietzsche's view, was a forge, not a punishment, not a shortcut to greatness. But in the modern world, we've rebranded that forge into a pressure cooker. Get hurt, bounce back, share the glow up, post the lesson, move on. We want to fast forward through the hard parts and skip straight to the wisdom. But healing doesn't follow deadlines, and strength doesn't respond to hashtags. It's not linear. It's not pretty. It's not always shareable. Sometimes what doesn't kill you just leaves you confused for a while, or angry, or scared, or quiet. And that's okay, because that's where the real work starts. Strength, the way Nietzsche meant it, isn't about pushing through pain with a smile. It's about being undone and then choosing how to rebuild. It's about facing the why behind the suffering, not just enduring it. It's about letting the pain shape you, not shut you down. And in that sense, strength looks very different from what we've been told. It might look like slowing down, going to therapy, letting go of people who once felt safe, relearning how to trust, grieving who you were before the pain, forgiving yourself for not bouncing back faster. This kind of strength, it's quiet. It doesn't always get applause, but it creates something rare, inner sturdiness. Not just the ability to keep going, but the ability to keep feeling. Because strength without feeling isn't strength. It's armor. And armor can't grow. So maybe the quote isn't wrong, but it's incomplete. A more honest version might be, what doesn't kill you has the potential to make you stronger if you're allowed to feel it, supported in facing it, and patient enough to heal from it. That's a version rooted in compassion, not pressure. In depth, not display. In actual transformation, not performative toughness. But what happens when we start redefining strength this way, and people from older generations push back? What happens when your parents say, "In our time, we didn't have the luxury to fall apart"? Or when they see your softness not as growth, but as weakness? Or when they hear you question this quote and feel like you're questioning their life? That tension is real, and it matters. Because this isn't just a personal shift, it's a generational one. A redefinition of what it means to be strong, resilient, even human. And that brings us to something delicate, the moment when your healing feels like their undoing. Let's talk about that. For many older generations, questioning the phrase, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger," feels almost like a betrayal. Not of philosophy, but of memory. They didn't grow up in a world that encouraged emotional processing or gentle introspection. They grew up with war, scarcity, displacement, or survival on a daily level. There was no Timmy or permission to fall apart. So when they hear a younger person say, "Pain doesn't always make us stronger," it can sound like weakness, like entitlement, like rewriting the rules they lived by just to make life easier. But what's actually happening is something deeper. It's not a rejection of their strength. It's an evolution of it. Younger generations aren't trying to dismiss resilience. They're trying to expand it, to include softness, to include rest, to include wholeness. Not just the ability to keep walking, but the ability to walk without bleeding internally. Still, this shift is hard to watch when your own coping mechanisms were built around silence and sacrifice. When you had to numb your emotions just to keep going. When you were taught that vulnerability was a liability, not a virtue. And now, here comes a new generation, speaking openly about pain, asking for therapy, choosing slowness over speed, rest over grind, and daring to call it strength. Of course, it feels unfamiliar. Of course it feels uncomfortable, maybe even offensive. But underneath that discomfort is something beautiful waiting to be seen. That both paths quiet endurance and conscious healing carry truth. And strength might not belong to one generation or the other. Maybe it's found in the bridge we build between them. So if pain doesn't always lead to power, and survival alone isn't the end of the story, what does it really mean to heal? Let's end this journey with something deeper. Maybe the real message isn't that pain makes us stronger. Maybe it's this: pain reveals what strength really is. And sometimes, strength looks like getting back up. Other times, it looks like sitting down and finally letting yourself cry. It looks like asking for help, like choosing rest, like not needing to prove anything anymore, because what didn't kill you might have changed you. But you get to decide how. You get to choose whether it turns into bitterness or clarity, isolation or connection, numbness or growth. And that choice doesn't come from willpower alone. It comes from awareness, from compassion, from healing. So if you've been carrying something heavy thinking you should be over it by now, or wondering why you don't feel stronger yet, maybe it's not because you're weak. Maybe it's because you're still human, still becoming. And that's more than enough. If this video gave you something to think about or simply made you feel less alone, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment, share it with someone who's been carrying too much. And if you want to keep exploring these quiet, complicated truths together, you're always welcome here. A new video is coming soon. Not a solution, just another question worth sitting with. Thanks for staying with me all the way through. Until next time.